All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once again on another update for the conference that we're planning, the Ayn Rand Institute's AynRandCon Europe, which is happening April 1st until 3rd. And as we've said, we're also, ARC UK is going to do a week of events or 4.5 days of events leading up to the conference. So we've spoken a little bit about what to expect in the events that we're doing in the past few updates. But today I have Keith Lockitch, Vice President of Education and Senior Fellow at the Ayn Rand Institute, to tell us a little bit more about the conference itself, which takes place on the weekend. Keith, thank you for joining me. And
thanks for having me, Razi.
And my first, basically, first of all, can you just tell us who the speakers are going to be that the Ayn Rand Institute is going to be providing for the conference?
Yeah, so we have the speakers are all people who work at the Ayn Rand Institute or who are affiliated with ARI. We have some of our heavy hitters coming to London. So the keynote speaker is going to be Onkar Ghate, who's our Chief Philosophy Officer. He's kind of our philosopher in chief. And he's one of the world's foremost experts on Ayn Rand, on objectivism, and he's just one of the most brilliant people I know. So that'll be an exciting talk, a couple of talks that he's giving. We also have Yaron Brook, who I'm sure this audience is very familiar with. He's the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute, also someone who's been speaking about Ayn Rand's ideas for decades, a leading authority on her ideas and on its application to current events and that sort of thing. I'm going to be one of the speakers. I've been working at ARI for 20 years and doing a wide range of things related to objectivism, to talking about her philosophy, her ideas, education programs, that sort of thing. We have Aaron Smith, who's one of our staff philosophers. He's one of our instructors in our Objectivist Academic Center, a PhD philosopher, and he's going to be giving a talk as well, giving a couple of talks. And Tal Sfani, our CEO, is also going to be there, and he'll be speaking as well. We can talk about what people are going to speak on in a minute, but that's basically the speaker lineup. Oh, and Nikos Sotirakopoulos, who this audience is also very familiar with, he's going to be giving a talk. We're still kind of figuring out exactly what the topic will be, but we're excited to have him as a first-time speaker at one of our ARC events.
Awesome. And that is, I think that alone is worth traveling to London for. But of course, there's more. There's it's London. So that's also a good selling point. And so one question that I've been getting a lot of recently, and we now have an answer for, is about scholarships. People have been asking how to get a scholarship.
Yeah. So I think I think you have a link that you're going to share with people. So there's now a link that you can click on to go to an application form. I think there's an application form, and you can just give some information, tell us who you are, and I think there's some questions that we use to kind of evaluate whether you're a right fit for getting a scholarship. But we have scholarships available, and apply, and hopefully we'll see you in London. So how are are you posting it in the chat, Razi, or how are people going to get that link?
Yeah, the link is now in the chat. So if you're watching this live, you can click it. If you're watching this later on, then it will be in the description as well. By the way, thank you, Jonathan, for the super chats, Mary Aline, and Robert, who says excellent, looking forward to it. So thank you all, and yeah, anybody who hasn't booked their trip yet should do so. So you were going to say a bit more about the content of the talks.
Yeah. So let me say a little about who the conference is for, because the talks are really, they're primarily aimed at people who are fairly new to Ayn Rand's ideas. So we're going to be going into some issues that just sort of give her basic orientation to the world, how she thinks about morality, politics, some deeper issues. But I will say that given the speaker lineup that I just described, even if you're someone who's fairly familiar with Ayn Rand's ideas, when you hear this lineup of speakers talking about even issues that are sort of, you might regard as fairly introductory, there's always new insights and new takeaways that you can get. Whenever Onkar Ghate gives a talk on even an introductory talk on objectivism, there's always new little nuggets that even experts can take away from that. So for people who are fairly new to Ayn Rand's ideas, maybe you've just read the novels or you're just getting into it, it's the perfect conference for you. But even if you're more experienced, it'll also be valuable. So basically, I can kind of go through what each speaker is going to be speaking about. We don't actually know yet exactly what Onkar is going to be talking about. He's still kind of thinking about it, but he's going to be the keynote speaker. And, if you've never heard Onkar speak, as I just said, he's always full of deep insights, and he's an excellent speaker, very clear. I would say, if you've never seen him speak, I would go to the Ayn Rand Institute YouTube channel and just search for Onkar Ghate, Onkarghate. Just look up it. Basically, you could pick up anything at random and you'll find it interesting and illuminating. And I think he's done some events with you guys as well. On your YouTube channel, you can find him there as well. So we don't know exactly what he's going to be speaking on yet, but whatever it is, I can guarantee you that it's going to be interesting and fascinating. After Onkar's keynote, we're going to have two talks that kind of look at Ayn Rand's basic perspective on morality. And what's really interesting is that one of the important aspects of her view of morality is that she thinks that the very concepts that we use and the way we think about morality is completely wrong. And not just a little bit wrong, but basically 2,000 years of Judeo-Christian tradition has completely distorted the way we think about morality. So Aaron Smith is going to give a talk on the idea of self-sacrifice and altruism, which of course everybody thinks is synonymous with morality. That's what it means to be moral, is to be altruistic and to sacrifice for others. So his talk is called The Evil of Self-Sacrifice. And he's explaining why, from her perspective, the idea of self-sacrifice is actually is destructive. And part of the issue is that we conceptualize these issues incorrectly. Following that, I'm going to give a talk called The Virtue of Selfishness. So this is actually the title of one of Ayn Rand's books, The Virtue of Selfishness. So of course, everybody takes it for granted that selfishness is the epitome of evil. She regards it as a virtue. And again, part of the reason is she thinks that the way we understand the concept of selfishness is wrong. And that's what I'm going to be explaining and talking about in my talk. Yaron Brook is going to be talking about her political philosophy. She's a defender of capitalism. And he's going to explain, why, in her view, capitalism is the only moral social system. It's the only system that actually protects people's freedom to live and flourish. There's going to be lots of Q&A sessions for people who, these talks are short and you're going to be brimming with questions that you think of when you're exposed to these ideas because they're so radical. So we're going to try to have lots of opportunities for you to take people's questions. Again, Nikos, I said, is going to give a talk. Again, we're still working on the exact topic. That's just day one, the Saturday, I think it's April 1st. On the Sunday, there's going to be more talks that are going to go a little deeper into some of the deeper issues in philosophy. Usually at these kinds of events, Onkar will give a talk on free will. Ayn Rand has a really radical and insightful perspective on the issue of free will. There's, people take it for granted that if you believe in science, then you have to accept materialism and determinism. And if you accept free will, that can only exist if there's if it's somehow related to some supernatural or magical properties. And she rejects that completely and has a secular scientific understanding of what free will actually is. So I mean, that talk alone is worth the price of admission. If you're not familiar with Ayn Rand's views on free will, this is one of the deepest issues in philosophy, and it affects everything from morality to politics. It's a fundamental issue in her philosophy. So that's so there will be other sessions as well. One thing I can mention, Tal Sfani is going to give a talk called, the subtitle is Applying Objectivism to the Pursuit of Happiness. So this is something that he's very passionate about, is the idea that according to objectivism, the highest purpose of a person's life is the pursuit of their own happiness. And so, he's got a lot of insights into, what is happiness and how do you go about finding it in your own life and pursuing it in your own life. So lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah, we've had quite a lot of content on free will on the channel, and that's always the content that gets people, to disagree with what's being said on the channel. So, I mean, that more than any other topic, we see actually abortion maybe being the exception to that. We see people objecting to what they hear. So yeah, if you disagree, come to the conference. You'll have opportunities for one-on-one conversations with objectivist intellectuals.
Let me follow up on that point, because people might assume, well, this is a conference where people are interested in Ayn Rand, so everybody's going to agree and it's going to be boring. Absolutely not. We welcome people to come who want to challenge the things that we're saying, ask hard questions. I mean, that's why we're coming, is because we want to engage with people, and we want those difficult questions. We want people, Ayn Rand's philosophy, it's underappreciated just how radical a thinker she was. And, growing up in today's culture, you just absorbed so much conventional thinking, and she's overturning so much of the conventional ways that we think about things. It takes a lot to process it, and it's important. So it's important that you push back and that you resist and that you ask the hard questions, because that's how you can, get to the point of really understanding what she's saying. The question of whether you agree with it or not is really secondary. Is do you understand what her views are? That's really what we're coming for and what the conference is about.
And we have less than 2 minutes left, because the ARCUK members book club is starting in a couple of minutes. But I did want to ask you about any other activities that might be happening around the conference weekend.
Yeah, so there's supposed to be a mentoring networking session. I think there's going to be some people who are successful in business or in different fields. They're going to be at the conference, and they'll be available to mentor and to have a kind of like a speed mentoring session. There's going to be social events, lunches, dinners. I think you're in charge of the pub session, so you could say more about that. But yeah, it's a good mix of really interesting intellectual content, and then a lot of fun socializing and dinners and cocktail hours and all kinds of good stuff like that. So I love these conferences and look forward to them every year.
Well, I can't say much more about the pub session yet, but we will announce that soon. And I'm going on Thursday personally to test the place and make sure it's yeah, it is going to be a great weekend, and it's going to be a great week for people who can travel early. So I hope to see you all there, and thank you, Keith, for joining me. And we will have more updates on the channel in the coming weeks.
Sounds good. I'll see you in London.
See you in London.